Hello and welcome to this webinar about IoT security, and your IoT devices are more exposed than you think. My name is Henning Solberg. I'm the CTO of IXT, and with me I have Marius. Please present yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Henning. I'm Marius Holmsen. I'm the CTO of Shift Security, and we've been in the business now for approximately 2 years. And the main focus for us is all about zero trust. We see that we live in a very troublesome times. There is unstable, stable political circumstances, and we see that the critical infrastructure is now being more and more challenged, and hence why we saw the market opportunity to create a specialist partner specifically focusing on zero trust. So thank you, Henning.
Thank you, Marius. And that's also why we teamed up with Shift and with Zscaler on the zero trust part, and we will come back to that obviously throughout the presentation. Today we have short agenda where we go through the initial problems about why connected is not the same as being secure when it comes to IoT. And we're going to cover also why the traditional defenses fall short. We're going to cover the traditional private APNs, the VPNs, and why they are not enough anymore. And we're going to dive a bit more into the zero trust for IoT and what it actually means in practice. And we're going to look at a live demo about the clientless access, the PRA access, as we call it, and look on how we isolate that. And we have also set off some time at the end for some questions and answers from you guys attending. So let's dive into the problem. So what we are seeing today is that we are delivering IoT connectivity with private APNs and VPNs, and we have been doing that for a rough 15-20 years in the M2M and IoT industry. This has been good, obviously, for isolating the connectivity from the internet and to separate it from all other mobile traffic, so that sensors and gateways, routers, EV chargers, whatever is connected out there, will be separated from other traffic and isolated from internet type of traffic. And it's been serving its purpose very well, of course. But we now see that the landscape is a bit changing. We need to add additional layers to that type of access. And that's where we see that zero trust and that type of services could be useful also in the IoT space. Marius?
Yeah, definitely. I could add something to that. So we do see now that one of the most problematic areas is all about the remote access. And one of the largest MDR vendors or suppliers out there published their threat report for 2025, where they say that 65% of all incidents they have reported is all related to kind of remote access. And specifically, they point out VPN. So VPN, and the main problem with VPN is that it's all network, tunnel based. So it basically, in all essence, says that if you go from this IP, you have access to this IP. So it doesn't look at the specific traffic or evaluate the traffic or give the least privileged access. Is what we are all kind of looking for today. So VPN in its simplest form is all about tunneling traffic. And that's why we today look more into solutions regarding zero trust. How can we explicitly allow a single device to an application and not allow broad network access? So, and just to give a few examples, right? You might have a few devices out there with limited protection, which means that either a bad actor might be able to reuse that SIM card, or they might be able to attach to one of those devices, or you might have like a 4G, 5G router with some Ethernet ports. And with a more traditional VPN approach, it basically says that you have access to this network that resides in the data center. So zero trust is all about giving explicit access only for what the kind of device needs specifically. So in general terms, we sometimes say that instead of giving a broad network access, we give a user, a device, an entity, only specific application access with all the kind of traditional security checks in between. And we also see today that there's a lot of emphasis on this too. And I think this might be also because now there is a personal liability tied to it, which means that the C-level of the company is personal responsible, that the different companies have enough measurements when it comes to like cybersecurity, specifically what is regarded as critical sectors. And this is everything from energy, water, transport, health, etc. Right? So this means that even up to the kind of board level, they have personal kind of responsibilities to ensure that they have the right measurements in place. And when you think about how the typical data breach happens today, right? It's usually something that might not be that critical, but it's exposed externally or through that VPN tunnel, and they use that as a jump post, right? You have this kind of lateral movement, which means that you can attack maybe a less critical entity, but that entity has access to some a shared service which have access to all entities, and they can basically then move laterally inside that environment until they find those critical data. So we think segmentation is one of the key aspects, right? And this is specifically what we do now with Zscaler, that instead of giving that broad access, we specifically say that you can only reach this entity. You're not allowed to kind of jump between different entities in the data center. So we only specifically create that micro tunnel per device to the application that the device needs to kind of communicate to, which takes away the kind of possibility to use that as a jump post and kind of move laterally inside your environment. And these are critical things that's part of the all these two compliance. Thank you. And when we think about how the security has evolved, right? In the early days, in like the 80s, we were always trying to build a strong wall around the fortress, right? We had this inside-outside sort of mentality. So it was all about saying that the outside, that's where the bad actors and the kind of threats resides, and the inside is all where our critical data is, right? And then we can realize that we need to do this slightly differently. And when you think about the whole history of zero trust, it was Mr. John Kindervag who defined this in, I believe it was 2010, where he basically said that he would not trust anything inside or outside, and have this same zero trust mentality. And after COVID, we also seen that a lot of users now no longer kind of resides in the office. So it doesn't really give us any benefit to have a secure fortress around the office, because the users are outside. You have a lot of entities, sensors, OT, IoT equipment that all resides outside, that fortress, which means that we need to kind of create a secure communication path for those critical assets, for those critical OT, IoT devices. And I think the fundamental thing about security is that you can't attack what you can't see. So you need to kind of remove that attack surface and make sure that you have, a zero trust mentality in everything you do when it comes to security.
And this also becomes very relevant when it comes to IoT and IoT connectivity, as the fact that most of these devices or sensors or whatever it is connected out there is typically remote sites. They are maybe unattended, unmonitored in such a way that it's easy to gain access to them without anyone being notified, and suddenly you are probably in a private APN. Somebody has attacked some remote station, some remote area where they are actually within the private APN already, and from there they gain access. So, why the traditional defenses fall short? Many of you probably have been into private APNs and VPNs for sure, and there are various aspects of this. Private APNs has been around for many years, and as I touched upon initially, this has been a good first layer of defense for separating traffic from a given application for a given type of traffic from the rest of the network, so that you from an IP level can separate that traffic and make sure it stays within its own environment, of course. And some of you have been using site-to-site VPN tunnels to access the private APN, and also using site-to-site VPNs for delivering the data from the sensors to the cloud or to your private data center. That's a typical use case where you have sensors that monitor whatever it is out there, sends its data through the private APN, and then through a site-to-site VPN tunnel into the cloud or into the private data center. And if you need to access the devices, you have typically been using either that VPN tunnel, or you have been using a client VPN, an open VPN, WireGuard, whatever it is, to be able to access that private APN and that specific device. But obviously the problem with this type of access is that once you have that VPN tunnel up and running, you have access to the private APN, you have access to basically everything that's inside that private APN. Of course, there are ways to control some of it from a firewall point of view. You can have access list, and you can build some sort of security, but whatever is going on inside that tunnel is pretty much not something we see or not something we control. And this is also a major problem with third-party access, as many of you probably have been touching on. If you have your own private APN, your private network, and then you need one of your vendors to connect to your network, and you need to give them access through a VPN, so they again can access that remote site and do troubleshooting on a specific device, then you basically open the door for that third party, from that PC, from that network, and that's one of the major problems we see today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing we need to also emphasize here, right, is that we specifically verify every device that connects, verify what the access privileges it has, and specifically only able to kind of communicate to the application we have defined in the policy. So this is about not having a broad tunnel that every device communicates through, but giving specific access per OT, IoT device to its application.
Yeah. And it's also about isolating those devices if something occur, maybe suspend the SIM, freeze the subscription, do an action based on the behavior of the device. So anything that goes out of the ordinary, out of the baseline, out of the normal behavior as we know it, we can do action based on that.
Yeah. And I think the main purpose of this talk today, Henning, is about giving zero trust network access for each device. Specifically, how do we allow third-party contractors to access those devices in a highly secure manner? But we will, in a later webinar, also dig into how we do better visualization, and also how we can do an easy segmentation, micro segmentation, nano segmentation, to ensure that there is, if something should happen inside that environment, that they are isolated to the that entity and cannot easily kind of spread laterally.
Yes. So to sum up a bit on that, of course, it's all about taking all the security measurements that's possible. So obviously from the very beginning, you have a private APN that secures you from a regular APN. As you know, a normal internet-based APN gives you full internet access, and that's probably not necessary in most cases, and therefore we are adding the private APN to most of the customer, but typically then replacing the traditional VPN with zero trust connectivity. That's what we are looking into going forward, and obviously also the fact that we have visibility inside the so-called tunnels that we are seeing from traditional VPNs.
Yeah, and I think one more thing I would like to emphasize when we have this slide is that we do see that more traditional solutions have a very limited audit trail, right? With the addition of the kind of security with the zero trust solution, we have the ability to get a full audit trail of what device accessed what resource, what they were able to do, and we can also control everything they do during that session. So you get a much better visibility and a full audit trail of every device, every user, every third-party contractor that might have accessed that device at that time, and what actions they did.
Sure.
So this is the kind of fundamental things related to zero trust, right? And the whole concept is that we need to kind of remove the attack surface, right? Because nobody could attack what they can't see. If you can't reach anything or you can't see anything, you can't attack it. And one of the fundamental differences when you think about traditional solutions versus zero trust is that in a more traditional solution, you would have a traditional VPN tunnel, and that VPN tunnel needs to be terminated on some of your devices, which means that you have an addressable point, and there is something there that the attackers will see, right? But from the Zscaler private access, you actually have something inside your environment that initiate the connection outbound, which means that there is no IP address, there is nothing visible in your environment because everything is initiated from the inside out. So you can in essence think about the zero trust exchange like a security broker. Your third-party contractors, your IoT devices, your OT devices, they all connect into this, zero trust exchange. And the zero trust exchange then brokers these connections into the application in the data center or in the cloud. And so this means that if an OT device tries to communicate to an application that might reside in AWS or Azure or GCP or your on-prem data center, the zero trust exchange will see that this IoT OT device, it has the kind of right to access this application, and it will create a separate, unique tunnel only for that endpoint to that application, but it's initiated from the inside. So you don't have any attack surface, you can't attack what you can't see, and that's how you basically protect that environment.
And one of the key takeaways here, which I think it's important to emphasize, is the fact that the transparency for the end devices and for the entire ecosystem of if you have a private APN, if you have some sort of sensors or devices which talks some kind of protocol to a centralized server, being MQTT, being CoAP, being whatever it is, adding zero trust capabilities to that private APN is a matter of full transparency from the application point of view, right?
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing, right? Because what the zero trust exchange really is, right? It's taking all of that security security solutions you might have today as physical firewalls, your IDS, your IDPs, your web application firewall that you might have. It's taking all of those that we typically kind of realized as physical boxes, right? That we need to kind of scale and maintain and kind of manage. And it basically provides that as a scalable, typical cloud service, which means that you only create the policies and it scales with you, right? So it's taken all of those traditional security physical boxes and realizing this as a more scalable and dynamic service, and you get all the logs and the visibility and have the ability to kind of create your own policies on top of that.
Mm. Yeah, so I think one of the key takeaways is obviously the attack surface, which is very much discussed these days. Of course, we have in traditional VPN connectivity to private APNs, you obviously have some endpoints where your client needs to connect. If you have a VPN, you have an endpoint IP, you have a peer IP for site-to-site VPN. So that is exposed to anyone. If you have a third party, it needs to connect to that IP or those IP endpoints, and by doing that, of course, you are exposing your infrastructure in a way that could be a potential way of attacking your infrastructure as well.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to also mention, right, is that another additional benefit is that if, for instance, you might acquire a new company or you might merge with another company, one of the real benefits of the zero trust exchange is that it hides the real IP addresses in your data center or in your cloud environment. So basically, if your OT device, your IoT device, your end users, your third-party contractors, they will see a synthetic IP address. You will not reveal what is the actual IP address of that application inside the data center. So it also gives flexibility. So it means that you can have overlapping IPs between different data centers, different cloud environments, because all of that is like masqueraded from the end device. So you will avoid those IP conflicts that you might see, right? And this might even be more a better, stronger point when it comes to like third-party contractors, right? Because they might be on IP addresses that might overlap with your data center, and if they install the VPN client, there might be some additional IP conflicts, right? But in this case, the good thing about the kind of Zero Trust Exchange is that it kind of terminates every connection, it validates every connection, and it makes sure that every device gets the least privileged access, and only the access that it specifically needs, and only to that specific application. So it doesn't get any broad network access, but it gets like a user device to application access. Yeah, and one of the typical more problematic things, right? And this is probably something you can also extend upon Henning, because a typical scenario that we've been discussing is that usually there might be, you have EV chargers, or you might have different OT, IoT sort of things where there is third-party contractors that need access to those devices, right? And it might be the kind of vendor who needs to do upgrades, or it might be maintenance people that travels out to the site, and they need to have a way to access those devices. And a traditional way to do it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Henning, has been to kind of distribute VPN clients. And sometimes those contractors already have a different VPN client, right? And then it might be a conflict. It's difficult to install, and it's difficult to maintain, right? And another security concern, right, is that when you have traditional VPN access, it means that third-party contractor has a direct network communication to your end device, and there is a challenge, and it's difficult for us to validate the kind of security posture of that device, because that third-party contractor is probably employed by a different company. We don't know if they have the correct like security measurements, or if they might already have some things ongoing on their device which we cannot control. And this is where the privileged remote access solution comes into play. And the main thing here, and the important thing here, is that this gives third-party contractors, it might be employees, access to those devices without having to install the client. And the important thing as well, and this is a very important difference, is that session to that end device, that is initiated from the Zero Trust Exchange. So the user connects with a browser, authenticates, gets access, but the actual connection to the end device is initiated from the Zero Trust Exchange. The end user only gets the pixels, which means that they cannot upload files, they cannot download files. If you have something unwanted activity on that laptop, it shouldn't, or it will not affect the kind of critical application, because the actual session to the backend system, to the application, lives from the Zero Trust Exchange. And I think you can add to this, Henning. I guess you, during those years, have experienced quite a few problematic cases where contractors needs to install separate VPN clients or
Yeah, this has been a problem for many years, and it's been tackled in different ways. We have one example is a big European commercial charging EV charging company that did commercial charging. They have about 7 or 8 vendors of high-speed EV chargers that's deployed all over Europe. And obviously these vendors, the different vendors, need access to specific chargers within that private APN, and this has been a challenge in the past with the regular VPN and limiting their access. So one vendor could not see the chargers of other vendors, etc. And obviously giving them access through a browser, which doesn't involve any client or install of software or anything like that to get a tunnel up and running, to give them access to that specific endpoint. That's been a great step forward in terms of having a secure way to access that private APN and that specific device, that specific charger in that specific country, and even down to a level where you can access that device or that charger for a number of hours, a number of days, and you can even session record what this vendor is doing. You can, as you say, limit in terms of the way you can upload files or whatever you can do on that endpoint. You are in complete control of that, and that's a great step forward, I think.
So I will give you a brief demonstration on how the user experience is for this. What we call it the kind of PRA console, the privileged remote access. So this means that me as an administrator, right, I could grant that third-party user access to certain devices or certain application on a specific time of day. So I could, for instance, say that these contractors will have access to these endpoints Monday to Friday from 8 to 4, right? And when that third-party user access the PRA console, which is like an ordinary web page with different application tiles, and I will show you this in a few minutes, they will only see the applications they can access when they have been allowed to do that. So which means that if I allowed between 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, that's when they will see those application tiles appear in their PRA console. And then we will then launch from the Zero Trust Exchange. We can then launch the application tiles as an RDP session, an SSH session, or a VNC session, right? Which means that they will then have the ability to SSH down to the endpoint, or if they also require like a TIC client, we could also spin up like a VDI session for them, so that they get a dedicated desktop with that application pre-installed. The important thing is that during this time, all the files that they will transfer to or from that system, we can have full, file control. We could sandbox, verify the kind of that it's a valid file. There's no that there's no malware or any other sort of things. And we can also do what we call session recording. So there's, in essence, two alternatives, right? You could say that I allow these third-party contractors to access this device Monday to Friday from 8 to 4, but I will do a session recording, which means that at a later time, I can go in and see what they actually did during that time. And sometimes the third-party contractors think this is a great idea, because it also means that if something happens to that endpoint, they have a full session recording that also validates that they didn't do anything wrong, or that incident might not be related to what they did. But there's also another option, and that's what we call the real-time monitoring. So this means that I could also create a policy saying that when that third-party contractor is accessing this device, I would like one of the employees to be part of that session. So this means that the third-party contractor will not be able to start the session unless there is a pre-approved person in that same session, and they basically do this as a joint session. And another good thing I just want to mention is that logging into the kind of target system is sometimes we do not like that the third-party contractors has the password to that target system, which means that we could also store all the kind of credentials, the private keys in a vault and automatically log the kind of contractor straight into that session without having to log into the application itself. But I will show you this in the lab in a few minutes. Yeah.
Yep. So I think to sum up the PRA, which is obviously one of the components of the zero trust concept that we touched upon. Of course, we're going to show it in the demo as well, but these are the main points.
Yeah. And I mean, like I'm also conscious about time. I see that, you know, it's typically when we communicate, Henning, we spend too much time perhaps. But if there is any interest in actually seeing this, trying this out for yourself, please let us know when we can do a more thorough demo at a later stage. Yeah.
Yeah. So to sum up also a bit on from the IoT point of view, like we touched upon earlier on, the private IPN, it will hide your traffic, but it doesn't defend it. So it's still a flat network. It's still within the APN, within the private APN, you can obviously control some access between the endpoints, but also the fact that when you are inside a private APN, it's still considered to be a flat network in terms of routing capabilities between endpoints and such. There is very limited control over the third-party access. So to transfer what we have seen now, which is typically something that has been used in the enterprise world for quite some time. The big difference here is obviously that we are moving the zero trust also into the IoT M2M space, and that's what I think is really exciting about this, because you are adding this extra security level also for the remote sites, also for really constrained devices which has limited capabilities in itself to protect itself. It might be a very limited IP stack that's running on the device, but still we are able to protect those devices and also protect the network itself from any other devices which been taking over in the private APN itself.
Yes, and this is the kind of main concept, right? It means that even though you might have your own employees that need to access these critical applications, do maintenance, upgrade, all of that, you have your third-party users who also needs access to the OT device or the IoT device or the kind of backend applications, and then obviously you have all of your OT IoT devices. And the whole concept here is that they all communicate through that zero trust exchange, which means that regardless on who you are, how you communicate, you will get all the kind of security capabilities and make sure that every single connection meets that security policy. And so this means you have a centralized place to kind of validate and verify that every single connection meets that security policy. And it also means that you can take away all of your attack services, right? Because your cloud environment, your on-prem environment, they all kind of communicate from the inside through that zero trust exchange, who becomes the packet broker that makes sure that every connection gets the least privileges that it needs, which takes away the ability for some bad actors to pretend they are a legitimate end user, end device, and then exploit that environment, right? So this really enhances your security.
And I think one key takeaway is also the installation of an app connector in your cloud environment or in your private data center environment. This is something that, from being an IP guy, is probably the biggest difference in terms of how the applications are communicating with each other. When you have a IoT device out there which is trying to connect to a server instance in the data center, with the installation of the app connector in the cloud environment, your virtual machines or your workloads which is running in the data center is basically just talking locally to the app connector, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the app connector is like the broker that initiates all communication initiated from the inside to the outside, and it makes sure that that single device can only communicate to that specific application and doesn't allow any other communication, which is very different from how the kind of traditional network-based VPN works. Yeah.
So I think, a bit conscious of time, we can now just dive short into the demo.
Yeah.
I guess you have the rights now, Marius, to share.
Definitely. So yeah. So thank you so much. So what I would like to demonstrate now, and which is a pretty simplistic demo, and it shouldn't take much time. But if I now pretend to be a third-party contractor, or I might be the employee as well, right? And I would like to access some of the OT devices, IoT devices, or even the kind of back-end applications. I would log into a console like this, and depending on time of day and my privileges, I would see all the application I have been given the kind of rights to access, right? So we can see that we do have some terminal server and RDP and SSH. So this means that if I have some critical assets out there, I would like that third-party contractor to be able to access this device. They would log into this portal, see all of these application tiles, and easily kind of select this. So if I press SSH, you will see that I now have my SSH window. And it's important to understand that this SSH session now, right, even though it feels like I'm on this device, it's actually initiated from the Zero Trust Exchange. So this means that if I have something on my device, I might be infected, or I might have some bad actors who has installed something on my device, everything I do will be inspected by the Zero Trust Exchange. So this is obviously the SSH part. I could also show you easily the RDP no part of this, but the whole concept is that you get secure access from every user, regardless of the device the user is on, and everything is inspected through the kind of Zero Trust Exchange. Unfortunately, I think we are kind of running out of time here, but my idea here was that from a user experience perspective, right, it feels that you have the same sort of level of connectivity, but now everything we do from files to copy, paste, everything we type, everything we do now gets fully inspected. And this is an easy way for you to give access to those third parties to access your crucial infrastructure, and at the same time you will have full control, because everything I do here now could be also session recorded, which means that I would see all of those clips going back, seeing what has this user done in my environment at that time. So yeah, so Yeah, I think that was everything we have time to do for the demo just now, Henning. So
yeah, I think we thank you for that, Marius. I think the PRA and all the related services to that will also be covered through a dedicated session later on. So we'll also get back on that. We have some questions also coming in that we can do on at the end of the session here. So one of them is there an impact for the device on server response times when we are adding the zero trust connectivity? What can you say about that, Marius?
yeah, no, there is no significant delay on the kind of server response time. Obviously, it depends on what sort of policy you do, but from a user perspective, it's very limited. And we also have something called the kind of CDX, which is the digital experience. So if a user or you want to measure the time it takes from OT, IoT endpoint, you get full visibility to how long it takes for the kind of policy to be executed. And it's a very not significant delay. But you get all of that those security policies enforced that and because maybe I shouldn't go into all of these details, but in essence all of these security enforcement we do are all happening in parallel. So it's a very slight delay and it shouldn't be like noticeable.
Yeah. Also, one question is regarding the way the app or the client, the hardware connects to the endpoint or to the server itself. It still has to connect somehow, meaning there will be some service/core endpoint, at least report its own existence and its own address. How is that done from a sensor point of view? That's when it connects to a server, like it's configured in the past to let's say connect to a co-op server, an MQTT broker. The sensor is communicating with something. If we add the zero trust capability in the private APN itself, how will that affect that communication?
Yeah, you mean the kind of source address, right, from the endpoint.
Source and destination address. I think the question is all about.
Yeah. So you can basically decide that in policy, but the way it default works is that you do either you kind of specify the IP or you can do like DNS and by default the DNS response that the endpoint gets is a synthetic IP to hide the real IP of that backend server. But this is also configurable, and I'm happy to do a kind of follow-up session on that topic specifically, because this takes us into a lot more details than what we have time to do just now. So I'm happy to do to update you on that specifically. But this is in a short answer, it's configurable. You decide if you want to show the real IP or if you want to have a synthetic IP, which means that the IP will be from a predefined pool and the real IP of the kind of server in the backend will be hidden. And you can also do source IP anchoring, which means that you can specify what source address that the end device will see. But the default is that the application server will see every communication from the app connector, but this is also configurable. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we have to wrap it up. If there are more of the questions, we'll follow up on that. But running out of time, so I think we to sum up a bit on the architecture itself. This slides pretty much sum it up, where we are adding the zero trust exchange in the network itself. Obviously, being the core network, which supports all the SIMs in the field, being a sensor, gateway, tracker, camera, whatever you have out there in the mobile networks. talking into the IXT mobile core, controlling by the CMP or through the APIs. Obviously, traffic traveling through the Zero Trust Exchange, and on the other side, within your cloud environment, being AWS, Azure, GCP, whatever it is, where you are running your services, your private data center, where we are deploying the app connector for the Zero Trust. So this basically sums up how we implement that from a network point of view. Yes. So thank you very much for attending, everyone. This session, and also we will follow up with the upcoming webinars, which will also cover more deep dives on the Zero Trust itself. We will also cover endpoint security, some GSMA, IoT connectivity and security guidelines we will cover, and more aspects on security going.
Yeah, and I'm specifically excited for when we look into the actual visualization part, right? When we look at how we can do segmentation and also visualize every communication from every device, and I think that would be, you know, a huge thing when we are able to kind of demonstrate that in a few weeks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, and have a great day, and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day. Thanks.